where we now live in our flat that's owned by my parents just above the intersection by the Blackbird pub. We get a nice view out over all of the roads in every direction and the lovely sound of the ambulances passing by on their regular route on a regular basis. And we got to see from our windows at the top the frost on the pavement. When I saw that, I was glad I didn't have to go anywhere and I could just put the kettle on, put the heating on and stay inside. But after the sun came out a few hours later, I looked out again and the frost had melted. Sometimes when we look out the window in our flat at the trees just outside our window, I see the birds and the pigeons and the magpies hopping around on the different branches. And I look at them and I think, how simple and short your life is. And even the magpies, they live in the moment from one day to the next. They don't even live more than 5 years, even the hardiest birds. And if any of you have pets, you might have sometimes looked at your pets lounging around the house and felt a little bit of jealousy for their simplicity of lives in your heart. I look at our cat and I think how easy a life you have. Your food is taken care of, you're looked after. The biggest problem that you have to deal with is where is the sunniest spot on the carpet for you to lie yourself down. All these creatures, just like the frost on the pavement, are relatively powerless and short-lived. And as humans, we have a tendency to think that we're different to that somehow, that we have control over our own destiny, that we can make grand plans and boast in our achievements. It's something natural that's in us, and especially at this time of the new year where we start thinking about resolutions and plans and things that we want to change in the new year. It's easy to make plans thinking that we're in control of our destiny. But this passage from James shows us that really our lives are not in our hands. And so that's where I want to start for this morning. We can see in chapter 4, verse 14, where James says that we are like a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. In the grand scheme of eternity, our whole lives are but the blink of an eye. Psalm 103 is another place which has this kind of similar sentiment in what it's expressing, where verse 15 to 16 say, "As for mortals, their days are like grass. They flourish like a flower of the field. For the wind passes over it, and it is gone, and its place knows it no more." It's possible, and many people inside and outside of the church do this, to go through life without really thinking about our lives in the context of eternity. To go through acting as though we are the ones that are eternal and all-powerful, and everything that we set in stone will stay there. But there are going to be inevitably times in our lives where we get brought back down to earth and reminded of the fact that our lives are not in our hands. For me, I've been going through one of these experiences recently. You might have seen, some of you, in the news that just before Christmas, kind of the last couple of weeks of December, there were a lot of redundancies happening across the financial industry, 300 or so nationwide, and unfortunately my whole team is impacted in that. So I'm now in a position that I didn't expect to be in anytime soon, where I'm now job hunting for something. I've got until the end of March, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing after that. And when that happened, it made me reflect on myself and on where I was putting my stuff in my life and where I was getting my value and my identity from. And you realise when something like that gets taken away from you so suddenly, that actually oftentimes a lot more of our identity is rooted in that thing than we might have realised. This was about a week before we went to the States for Christmas. The meeting went in with about 20 minutes notice. All a very sudden and shocking type of thing. I realised that I'd been doing what it's describing in chapter 4, verse 13, where it says that we're going around and making this plan or that plan and saying we'll go here and do business and make money. I'd been saying in my own heart, today or tomorrow I'll get such a promotion and move to such a team and do business and make money, not realising that really it wasn't in my hands. But in allowing me to go through this situation, God has humbled me once again and reminded me and put me face to face with that question that we see in the book of James. What is your life? Some of us may be going through situations in our lives now where we're also being reminded of this same truth, where things just feel a little bit out of our control, whether it's illness in ourselves or the people that we care about, whether it's financial situations, job situations, anything that is feeling out of control. And from this passage in James, we can definitely say that we shouldn't be surprised that we're going through these things, but that God is in us with them. These things can ultimately be good for us. God can turn anything for the good of those who love him. But at the same time, it doesn't make it feel any more easy or pleasant as we're going through them. And indeed, I'm still wrestling with different thoughts. Every day, some days are better than others of wondering what's to come. But I'm asking God to help me to trust him and to ask him to guide my plans and my steps, because he knows what's coming in the future. So we realize from this passage that our lives are not in our hands. And when we go through situations like this in our lives, God has been gracious enough to snap us out of our illusions and to stop us from becoming like those people that were described in the first few verses of chapter 5, where it describes the rich oppressors who are going from this place to that place and building up wealth and exploiting the people around them. Most of us wouldn't be going around and exploiting people around us for wealth, but we may be going around seeking to build up wealth and a comfortable life for ourselves. That's a very natural thing, especially in our Western society, for us to be encouraged to do. But woe to us if we go through our whole lives ignorant of how little control we have and how little value some of these things that we spend so many hours working towards actually have. It's a painful process to be humbled, but in verses 7 and 8 of chapter 5, God is calling us to be patient and to endure, because the Lord is near. That's the calling that we have, the challenge that James is giving us in this passage. And we can understand through the use of the word endure in this passage that there will be difficult things that we go through, that it's inevitable to a certain extent that we'll face those things, because you wouldn't ever use the word endure for something pleasant. That you wouldn't say that you're going to endure through a brilliant movie, or you're going to endure a delicious meal or a restful nap. You endure things because they're tough to get through. And that's a reminder that we're having here in this passage. But through these things that are difficult, it allows God to remind us of our humility in his divinity, and to take a proper view of our place in eternity. Chapter 5 verse 11 references the endurance of Job. Many of you know the story. He went through a very serious time of testing and trials, where pretty much everything that he trusted in an earthly sense was taken away from him one by one. It's more struggle than most of us can even imagine. And I think to myself now, if this is how I'm feeling and how shaken up I am for losing one thing, my job, when I have a few months warning that it's going to happen, I have time to try and find another one. Realistically, I probably wouldn't be unemployed for that long if I keep on applying for stuff. But if I'm feeling this broken up about that, and it's shaken up my identity this much, how much more so must Job have felt it, to lose not only his job and his livelihood, but his home, his children, and for his friends and even his wife to turn on him. I'm glad that Becca hasn't turned on me in the middle of this situation and told me that it's all my fault. But this is a real thing and a real example of someone we can see who went through all of this suffering, who went through this time of testing and had to endure patiently trusting in God. And Job is a really good example, because he went through this not being stoic and ignoring his pain and putting on a tough face and just acting like nothing was wrong. If you read the story of Job, you can clearly see that he battled with this in his mind. He wrestled with it in his heart. He took his fear and his anger and his complaints directly to God and said, "Why are you doing this?" And God showed up and answered him and gave him the peace and the restoration that he was seeking. Chapter 5 verse 7 says that we should endure our struggles patiently, like a farmer who is waiting for the early or the late rains for his precious crops. A farmer knows that no amount of worrying is going to bring the rains quicker or later for his crops. He just has to do as much as he can do and then wait for the rains to come. Just recently, we saw a crazy level of flooding across the East Midlands not too long ago that did affect a lot of the crops of farmers in this area. It flooded their fields. They lost a lot of their winter crops, in particular of barley, I think was the main one that was impacted. And those farmers, while they would have doubtless been upset by that, of the lost income, the lost livelihood for a time, there is nothing that they can do but wait for their fields to dry up, plant their spring crops, and hope and pray that the rain doesn't come again in the same way. And in a sense, that's what we can do as well in our lives. We know that no amount of worrying or stressing is going to make something happen or not happen. We can look at the things that God has given us to be within our control. We can work at it and do the best that we can. But then we have to trust in God and leave it to Him for the rest of it, waiting patiently and enduring patiently, like these farmers. This is where it says in chapter 4, verse 15, if the Lord wishes, we will live and do this or that. And that's a really healthy attitude for us to take and a thought for us to have in our minds in everything that we're going through in our lives. And we endure patiently and strengthen our hearts, as it says in chapter 4, verse 8, because we know that whatever happens, we have one thing that we can trust in with absolute confidence, our good, compassionate, and everlasting God. And one prayer that I've been coming back to that came to me when I was in one of my stressed morning quiet times just a few days ago, thinking about trying to pray and just being distracted, thinking about the different things that I need to do and the jobs I need to apply for. And this prayer came to me, which is, Lord, may I desire you more than I desire a job. And I think that that's relevant for many of us in different situations in our lives, to pray, Lord, may I desire you more than I desire a resolution to my problem or my situation. May I desire you more than I desire healing for myself or someone in my family. May I desire you more than I desire for my situation to work out in a convenient way. That's a real challenging prayer for me and something that I'm coming back to day by day as I'm being forced essentially in this time to go back to the one and only thing that I can put my trust in, which is a good, caring, kind and compassionate God. And so that's an encouragement that I would give to you if that's a prayer that you think would be helpful. Keep that in your minds, keep that in your hearts, and pray that through the situations that life is presenting you with. The only thing that makes all the difference is that God is compassionate and merciful. That's what we see in James chapter 5, verse 8, where it tells us that the thing that makes all the difference is that the Lord is with us and Jesus is coming back. And we look forward to and take great hope from that. And because that's the thing that we're trusting in, the thing that we're looking forward to, the thing that we have in our hearts that is focusing us and bringing us through these seasons, that affects the way that we endure as well. We don't endure grumbling against each other. We don't endure disputing and fighting and being greedy or worrying or being angry, because we're trusting in God to bring us through this season, and He is the one that our faith is in. Ultimately, all of us here, whatever we're going through, our hope is coming from the same place. We're trusting the same God to bring us through that situation. We are waiting in it together. And so that means that we wait encouraging each other, because whenever one of us loses our way, somebody else can point them back to God and say, look, this is the one God that we are trusting in this situation. So as we're kind of at the beginning now of a new year of 2024, it's a great encouragement to me, and I hope to you, to know that the whole of this year 2024 and all the years beyond that are in God's good hands, and He will teach us and guide us, even through the difficult times, just like the smooth ones. And we read part of this psalm earlier. I'd like to close by reading the whole thing. This is a psalm written by King David when he was going through very similar things to what we're going through at the moment. He was feeling like he didn't know where his trust would be, where his hope was in, but he was coming to God, the one that he could trust in. And so I invite you to just maybe close your eyes if it's helpful for you to concentrate, or just listen along as I read. I think this is Psalm 130 as we come towards the end of our service. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless His holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all His benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works vindication and justice for all who are oppressed. He made known His ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. He will not always accuse, nor will he keep his anger forever. He does not deal with us according to our sins, nor repay us according to our iniquities. For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is his steadfast love towards those who fear him. And as far as the east is from the west, so far he removes our transgressions from us. As a father has compassion for his children, so the Lord has compassion for those who fear him. For he knows how we were made. He remembers that we are dust. As for mortals, their days are like grass. They flourish like a flower of the field, for the wind passes over it and it is gone, and its place knows it no more. But the steadfast love of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, and his righteousness to children's children, to those who keep his covenant and remember to do his commandments. The Lord has established his throne in the heavens. His kingdom rules over all. Bless the Lord, O you his angels, you mighty ones who do his bidding, obedient to his spoken word. Bless the Lord, all his hosts, his ministers that do his will. Bless the Lord, all his works, in the places of his dominion. Bless the Lord, O my soul.